Welcome to the Grape-Wise April and May podcast. I'm Paul Kraut, agronomist with Helena Agri-Enterprises here on the Central Coast, with Nathan Miller, our Santa Maria branch manager and vineyard consultant. We're here to talk to you today about some of the activities and things that we're seeing in the vineyards from bud break to pre-bloom. So Nate, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
Awesome. So we've had a lot of rain in California this year, more than we're used to. What in your mind, or what are you seeing right now in the field?
We set a lot of records this year.
We did.
In fact, I think we might be skiing through this entire year. I don't think Mammoth's going to shut down.
Exactly.
They're going to ski all the way through to November of next year. There's enough snow up there.
Well, we've got a lot of precipitation. I think here on the Central Coast, what have we gotten? How many inches of rain have we gotten? 40 inches of rain in some places, where last year I think we were at about maybe 16, so 2 to maybe even 3x what we normally get. How's that affecting the vines? What are we seeing out here right now?
Well, everything is very much cold and tight. Typically by now we'd be 1 to 2 sprays deep here in Paso, and as you can see behind us, we're still tying canes down and doing pruning. This is one of the last vineyards that the vineyard management company that we work with is getting through here. We have a little bit of bud push here. You can kind of see a little bit of a Q-tip. So we're bumping up against time to get going here.
Yeah, so we're about 3 weeks behind, more than likely. Soils are really wet. We were just driving up to this vineyard and water's just coming out of the hills. What does that mean from a nutrition standpoint at bud break when we got cold, wet soil conditions?
Well, we are not going to have very much uptake and stuff coming up from our roots. So products like Coron, Orbix, Megafull, those are going to be big hits for us for foliar materials. In fact,
yep,
we're suggesting getting those on early. Probably going to see a lot of spring fever.
Absolutely, yeah.
We're going to see a lot of spring fever going on here.
With cold, wet soils, plants, the vines can't have a hard time taking up nutrients. Obviously, at bud break, they're not taking up any nutrients because there's no transpiration taking place. There's no leaves to create that straw. So early on, the vines are using what they had stored from last year. So if you were a really good Grape-Wise grape grower and you followed our fertility plan, you made a post-harvest fertilizer application. All those nutrients you made during post-harvest are going to be available to the vines today and now to have a strong bud break. Once we get 4 to 5 fully expanded leaves, then we can expect to see soil applied nutrition start to take place. Hopefully, if the soils are dry or drier and well drained. And I don't think in a lot of these clay soils that's going to be the case.
I got an old viticulture instructor named Rich Thomas from Santa Rosa Junior College. A lot of people know him, and he always tell us, "Big boy, vines don't like wet feet."
No, they don't. And not just, that affects not just nutrient uptake, but wet feet can affect a whole other host of issues, right?
Root rot.
Yep.
We can see that. Pears are really some of the only thing that like wet feet.
Yep.
These vines do not like to grow, and that's where the foliar nutrition comes in, as we're trying to get that soil drawn down and get some aeration in there. So doing a little in-row cultivation on top to get that aeration going, but also using higher quality materials. Unfortunately, pricing for some folks is a little tough, but those higher quality materials are going to be very important to get that stuff going this year. OFOS is
yep,
one of them. Orthophosphate materials, quicker uptake materials like 0021 for
Nucleus 21.
Nucleus 21.
Yep.
Standout, getting some microbial activity going, because everything is just drowned.
And that's why, we have those tools, those soil applied tools, like you mentioned, Nucleus OFOS, Nucleus 21, Standout. Those nutrients are designed to be immediately available to the vines. They don't need to break down in the soil. They don't need to be metabolized by microbes like other nutrients do. But it also brings the fact you mentioned, foliar nutrition. And when the vines are struggling to take up nutrients through the soil, a great option is to go foliar, because the vines still need that energy. And because we're behind 2 to 3 weeks, we're trying to catch up. We need to catch up. We need to grow shoots. We need to create good infrastructure, good structure in those vines to have a strong bloom. So foliar nutrition early on, I think, is going to be important as well.
So one of the things that we touched on, Paul, you talked about
Pre-bloom nutrition.
Pre-bloom nutrition.
Yep.
One of the things is that we needed to talk about was the importance of calcium.
Calcium and boron,
zinc,
and zinc,
especially for our setting a crop, right?
Yep, to set your crop pre-bloom. That time period, because that's when the plant demand is. The plant is demanding and needing larger quantities of calcium, boron, and zinc in that critical time period. So we want to make applications of those nutrients right before that demand time, so it's in the plant and available. And what's one of the tools that you use, Nate?
Rexel CBZ.
Rexel CBZ.
We take a look at thiocal, or
yep, calcium thiosulfate.
Calcium thiosulfate at this time of the year
through the soil.
Yep. Through the soil. It's going to be very important because we got a lot of free moisture, as we've talked about earlier.
Yep.
These plants are going to be just screaming, so they're going to be expanding rapidly. We need that cell wall structure with that calcium. It's super important for that, because they're just going to be going bloop.
Exactly. And yeah, without calcium, you're not going to get cellular division. You're not going to get growth. People think of nitrogen as being really critical. Well, calcium is number 2 when it comes to good growth. And during rapid shoot development, nothing more important than that.
And in years like this, where we have high rainfall, we don't have to add as much nitrogen as we used to, because it's going to become available in the soil. These roots are going to be foraging for a lot more stuff, and we're going to be able to substitute and take some of that budget money and slide it around and put it over in the calcium column to help with cell wall structure and cell division. Calcium, potassium.
Yep.
Going back to our 0021.
Absolutely. That's a key component in our May pre-bloom to bloom type fertilizer applications.
I'm feeling kind of reminiscent about my growing days back in Anderson Valley here right now.
Well, this is, I mean, we're going back to the late 90s, early 2000s, and in the kind of situations that we haven't seen these in California since back then.
And there are a lot of young growers out there right now. So take note, guys and gals out there. There are, we need to get out and get up and get a canopy up quick.
Yep.
Use that water that's in the soil. We're not going to have to irrigate some of these ranches, especially out here on the west side. We may not even have to irrigate at all. So it's very important when you're pushing some of these materials that we check our irrigation system quickly. We get that material put in to the system as quickly as possible and get it pushed out with only a couple gallons of water behind it, because we don't want to waterlog that soil any more than we have to.
No, we don't. That's going to make fertigation techniques and that whole piece of it very, very important. You have to pay attention to it a little bit more this year.
Whereas last year, we started irrigating in January.
Exactly.
Every week for at least 5 to 6 hours.
I know.
And that's not going to happen.
Well, we're going to, fertilizer costs are up, but we're going to save on power and electricity because we're not going to have to run pumps. So
yeah, one grower told me he's already at least $35,000 ahead in energy costs compared to last year.
Well, that's a good thing. So we talked a little bit about nutrition. What about some pest management issues that we may see cropping up in these wet conditions that we haven't seen in a long time? Let's talk insects.
Well, leps are going to be a big one.
Lepidopteran, so leaf folders, cutworm, skeletonizer.
Cutworm's a big one. We've already seen a few cutworm. Skeletonizer's actually making a comeback. There are some older growers out there that remember skeletonizer. It kind of went away for about 15 years, went into hibernation.
Yep.
15, 20 years, and we're starting to see it rear its ugly head here in the Central Coast, especially on the east side.
So, well, when we have this much rain, you can see we've got a lot of green growth here with all this moisture in the soil. This is, it's great to have a cover crop, and it's great to have grass and unfortunately weeds growing everywhere that have this green growth, but that's going to harbor,
except for if you're in a frost zone.
Exactly, but that's going to harbor insects. And then later in the season, when it does dry down, where are those insects going to go? They're going to go into the vineyard.
And we're going to see a lot, and even in our other crops, where there are open fields and that grass is green right now, harboring all those insects up there. I mean, it's just a huge migration down in here. So it will be a difficult year. That's why getting that canopy up early, getting your nutrition on at the right time, even a couple of days difference can make all the world when it comes to the end of the season. If we're 3 weeks behind, you got to remember our typical harvest starts in September and goes through till the middle of November with Cabernet here in the Central Coast. If that's the case, we could end up in December. So we got to figure out a way to make up that time so we can get this crop in.
Exactly. So the things that we do now have a serious and profound impact later in the season. Nutrition, pest management, water management, canopy management, all these things set the stage really for the rest of the season.
Let's knock some runs in early.
Exactly. Make it easy.
And ride the wave into home, the 9th inning.
We talked about insects. What about disease?
Well, with all the moisture in the air, we could actually see downy mildew. In some of these spots, we have a lot of free moisture in the air. So in the Central Coast, you'll see a marine layer come in and they'll sit at a hillside about halfway up, and we'll see downy mildew develop in there. Mildew is going to be huge this year.
Powdery, yep.
Bunch rot, possibly later. We're seeing some storms. They keep, we had a bunch of storms here through March. It was like weekly. You could almost set your watch to it. It was kind of eerie. It was like we're going back to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We're raining again.
Exactly.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Phomopsis. There's another waterborne disease that's something that again we don't think about because we usually don't have late rains or this much moisture and humidity late, early in the season like this. Phomopsis is another one that we can see
from developing. The North Coast, I always put copper in my programs. So
we might be thinking about that this year out down here on the Central Coast.
It's already done.
Perfect.
Already put in the programs, Paul.
Awesome. Well, I think we've covered everything. April and May, we're really late this year. Like Nate mentioned, we're late. We're about 3 weeks late. We're just barely at bud break. So between April and May, we've got a lot of important things taking place. Important nutrient applications, important pesticide applications, and important cultural practices to take place. So if you're a grape-wise grower, you have the access to experts like Nathan here and myself to help you with your programs. Okay, so Nate, we've gone over a whole host of different things today. We've talked about nutrition, we've talked about cultural practices, we've talked about pest management. Where can someone find out more?
HelenaAgri.com. And you can look us up at the different branches we have here on the Central Coast. We have Salinas, Santa Maria, and Oxnard.
Yep. And in the Central Valley, Exeter, Hanford, Shafter, Modesto, Merced, Yuba City,
and
Stockton. We've got branches all over the place, and you can find where those branches are, and you can get their contact information on HelenaAgri.com and clicking on locations. On behalf of myself and Nate, thank you very much, and be grape-wise.